Hey guys, Adam here with Source Some Creative. Today, I want to show you how you can create really cool overlapping items on your Duda sites using Z-Index. Now, this is going to require you to get into your code just a little bit, but trust me, it's super easy, and I'm going to show you how. Now, before we get started, please remember, like this video, subscribe to the channel so you can get all of my new tutorials when they come out. Okay, let's go ahead and dive in and get started. All right, so here I am on my site editor, and what I've done here is I created a new row with 3 columns, and in each of those columns I placed an image. Now, so far I've changed absolutely nothing as far as any of the settings are concerned with the row or any of the columns or the images themselves. Now, let's say I wanted to try and create a really cool overlapping effect where all of these 3 images are overlapping each other. So I'm going to go ahead and set that up real quick and show you what we're trying to accomplish here and how we can then adjust the layering of our items using Z-Index. So on this first one in the column, I'm going to create some negative margin on the left, some margin on the top, and then on this third column, I'm going to go ahead and do something similar here. And let's just say we'll make this negative 225 and then 500 on the top. Okay, so I've created this overlap. And, I think this looks kind of silly right here. I want this image to be on top of this image. But how do I do that? You may have noticed that there are no settings to be found anywhere in this design tab that are going to allow you to bring this image up over the top of this one. So what we need to do in this case is we need to use what's called Z-Index. Now think of Z-Index as layers. Now if you've ever used something like Photoshop, it uses layers, and when you design your different elements, things will stack one on top of each other to create layers. Well, Z-Index functions in the same way. So let me go ahead and show you how this works. So we've already selected this image and gone into the settings. And now what I want to do is click on this gear icon and go to Edit HTML and CSS. And that's going to open up a new window for us. We want to make sure we're under the CSS tab and under General CSS for all devices. And then in between these brackets, what we want to do is create our Z-Index CSS code. And that's simply just Z-index : space. And then I've got here 9,999 semicolon and close that out with the curly bracket. Now you'll see what happens as soon as I hit update, this image is going to come up over the top of this one. And there you have it. So again, Z-Index works as a layer, and what I told it to do by giving it this very large number of 9,999 was to come all the way to the top, as high as it could go. So that brought it up over the rest of, or over this other image. So now let's say, I think this looks pretty good with the way that this guy is coming up over this one. But let's say for the sake of our tutorial that I wanted this image to now be behind this one. So let's go ahead and try something very similar here. So we'll go into our HTML, CSS again. And let's just paste that same code here in between our curly brackets. And we'll take a look and see exactly what happens here. So let's hit update. And you'll notice as soon as this check mark comes up, it's applied the changes, but nothing has actually changed. Well, that's because, again, we're giving it this high number. We're telling it to come all the way to the top. So that's not what we want to do. We want to send it to the bottom, which means we have to go to a lower number. Now, you can also use negative numbers here, but let's see what happens when we hit 0. So we've hit 0 and it's still above this image. So let me show you now what happens when we hit -1. In this case, when we hit -1, it disappears entirely because now it's placed it behind the actual background elements of our row. And so that's a problem. So now how do we do this? Because we need it to be 0 in order to show above the background elements. But when we do that, it's still on top of this image. So the only thing left for us to do now, we'll leave this at 0. And we now need to go and change the z-index of this middle image as well. So again, thinking of this as layers, if this image here is at 0 and this image here is at 9,999, then in theory, this image needs to be anywhere in between those two numbers in order for it to display behind this image, but above this image. So let's go ahead and paste our z-index code here. Now we'll see if I save this at 9,999. It's now coming back above here because again, they're at the same layer, but as we saw when we first set this up, it was giving this column preference over this one. So let's now put this somewhere in the middle. Let's just call it 500. And there we have it. So now, because we put our z-index number lower than this one, but higher than this one, we can now see that these images are stacked exactly the way we want them. Now you can apply this, the options are endless. Whatever you can imagine in stacking elements on your site is up to you. I mean, this could be buttons, this can be images, this can be columns and rows. Any element can apply the z-index CSS. So there you have it. That's how you stack images using z-index. Hope this was helpful for you. And remember to check out all of my other tutorials as well.